Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the pre-application meeting for clean diesel funding. My name is Jeff Windsor, and I'm the contract specialist for Metropolitan Energy Center, and I'll go over the request for applications along with Kelly Gilbert, the executive director for MEC. Since we are doing this meeting in webinar and not meeting form, you will be on mute throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window of the GoToWebinar screen and we'll try to answer them at the end. You can also later email questions in and they'll be accepted until November 18th. And we will provide an answer to those questions and forward them to everyone on here and post them to our website. Our agenda for the next 30 minutes to an hour is to give you an overview of the clean diesel funding request for application, then take a detailed look at application requirements, including evaluation criteria and format, then quickly review certain administrative conditions, and then we'll take your questions in a Q&A. I will now give an overview of the request for applications. Here's the timeline for the RFA. With questions regarding the RFA, again, they are due by November 18th and the application itself is due by November 30th. And our expected date for MEC selection notification will be early December. This request for application is intended to select beneficiaries to receive funding to implement projects that will achieve significant reductions in pollutions emitted from diesel engines. Successful applicants will become beneficiaries under MEC managed projects funded by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's National Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, or DERA program. Projects will replace, repower, or convert Class 5 to 8 diesel vehicles to cut emissions. Eligible vehicles include school and transit buses, delivery and freight vehicles, yard trucks, and work trucks. Eligible fuels are propane, CNG, LNG, or electricity. Projects supported through this RFA should be finished by August 31st, 2023. Thus, the old vehicles scrapped and replacement alternative fuel models deployed, where clean fuel conversions completed with converted vehicles in service. The geographic scope of selected projects will preferably be limited to Kansas and western Missouri, with some consideration for projects based in other areas of EPA Region 7, which also includes Iowa and Nebraska. DERA funding immediately available through this RFA is approximately $125,000. Successful applicants are required to provide cost sharing for project expenditures ranging from 55% to 75% of project costs, depending on technology deployed. Applicants willing to forego some funding, for instance, will improve their chances of selection. However, increasing cost share percentages in this manner does not guarantee success in the application process. You can get up to 25% to replace eligible diesel units with new CNG, LNG, or propane models, or up to 35% to replace eligible diesel units with CNG, LNG, or propane models that are compliant with CARB low NOx standards. We're up to 45% to replace eligible diesel units with zero emission electric vehicles. With this option, you can also apply to some charging equipment. Next, you can get up to 40, 50, or 60% to replace diesel engines with gaseous fuels, CARB low NOx, or zero emission engines respectively. And lastly, you can get up to 40% to convert a diesel vehicle to natural gas, propane, or 100% biodiesel. The anticipated time for selection of beneficiaries is early December 2022. Deployments and scrapping must be completed by August 31st of 2023. These funds are provided through EPA grants to MEC and will be administered by MEC in accordance with applicable EPA rules and regulations. Funding will be provided on a reimbursement basis. Costs incurred by prospective participants during the application process are ineligible for reimbursement. Project award is limited only by available funds. MEC reserves a right not to award any applicants or to offer partial funding to applicants. With eligibility, again, the geographic scope of projects will be limited to Kansas and western Missouri, and Iowa again, and Nebraska may be considered. New or converted AFEs must be powered by 100% biodiesel, compressed natural gas, liquefied natural gas, propane, or electricity. Vehicles being replaced or repowered must be class 5 to 8 diesel vehicles. Ineligible categories include school or transit buses, terminal trucks, short-haul delivery trucks, and long-haul freight trucks. Also, with eligibility, applicants cannot use DERA funding to enlarge a fleet or for fueling infrastructure except for limited support for electric vehicle charging systems. All units replaced under this program must be destroyed using specified scrapping methods. Scrapping must also be documented with photographs, scrap sale invoices, etc. And scrapping income will be subtracted from reimbursements. Old units must be scrapped within 90 days from the date that replacement vehicles are placed in service. Non-diesel vehicles are not eligible for replacement. And diesel vehicles ranging from engine model year 1996 to 2006 are eligible for replacement with natural gas or propane models under the terms of this program. And engine model year from 2007 to 2009 vehicles are eligible for replacement with zero emission electric vehicles. Next, applicants must confirm that the vehicle to be replaced or repowered is eligible under program terms and conditions. Applicants must also confirm that a planned replacement or conversion is certified and eligible. Engine model year and vehicle model year are often different. Engine model year can be confirmed by checking the engine plates of vehicles set for replacement. Certifications for engine model year by model and OEM are available through the California Air Resources Board at the following link. And for alternative fuel conversion, this can be confirmed through EPA compliant AFE conversion systems. And zero emission vehicles require no certifications. New vehicles must perform substantially the same work as the units they replace and have substantially the same horsepower and displacement. So with vehicle and engine model year replacement or repowered eligibility, please refer to the following chart here. The principal goal of this project is to select beneficiaries to implement alternative fuel engine or vehicle replacements that will achieve significant reductions in diesel engine emissions. Projects that cut diesel emissions in areas of poor air quality or where emissions negatively impact low-income communities are priority projects. Similarly, projects that eliminate diesel emissions from school bus fleets by deploying cleaner alternative fuel models reflect DERA priorities and will be assessed accordingly. Projects on the leading edge of technology development and that encourage innovation by service providers and regional peers are encouraged. Data capture and lessons learned is an important goal here. These will be leveraged into project success stories and shared through our business and community relationships using targeted outreach and educational peer-to-peer presentations. Together, deployment and outreach will encourage adoption of increased numbers of alternative fuel vehicles. Long-term benefits and outcomes will include the reduction of NOx, particulate matter, and other known harmful air pollutants. Next, encouraging expanded use of cleaner alternative fuels and vehicles with the goal of moving towards an increasingly self-sustaining regional alternative fuel market, also providing information to MEC on fuel consumed and emissions eliminated through these projects. And lastly, beneficiaries are expected to work with the Kansas City Regional Clean Air Cities Coalition to maintain their alternative fuel deployments long-term and are required to provide information to MEC on vehicle mileage and fuel consumed. I will now go over the application forms needed for this RFA. On this application, fill out your company information requested, including your UEI and FEN numbers, plus the information requested on your authorized official and project manager. Under B, project summary, on number 4, the total project cost should equal the sum of the cost share and the requested funding for all project components. This is not just the federal funds requested, and enter the requested funding for the project. On number 5, enter the anticipated month when the project will be completed. With number 6, enter the total number of vehicles you're including on the application. On number 7, enter a brief summary of your proposed project. Include any relevant information about your proposed project that is not provided on other application fields. And in section C, number 8, sign and date in the signature field to certify that the statements and information provided in this application are true and accurate. And by signing and dating, the applicant agrees to provide the required documentation and assurance necessary for funding. Under section D, project details on number 9, just type the project check and check all that apply there. On 10, check duty cycle that you're using. On 11, briefly describe operations and operating conditions. And on number 12, enter a short description of the location of the operation. With 13, state availability for peer networking and panel presentations to peers in industry in the region or nationally. Also state limitations on your availability to participate. And lastly, on number 14, discuss ways you plan to maintain or grow electric or alternative fuel vehicle program after the project ends. Here's what the budget table looks like for reference. On the summary page, just fill out the applicant name only. In this section here is the instruction section for the fleet data sheet. You'll need to enter the average percentage rebate you are seeking with this application. For vehicle engine replacements, enter detailed information about the units you are updating or replacing. You may group vehicles if they have the same basic information and the same replacement or upgrade costs. Multiple VINs can be listed for each group, separated by a comma, and including annual fuel hours, miles, etc. should be averaged for each group. You must also provide information about the upgrade, including the cost in the new vehicle upgrade section. Again, the engine family names are available through CARB listed by EMY and class and OEM EM. For vehicle or engine replacement, estimate scrapping costs and income in the scrapping tab here. And now for the criteria for evaluation. With that, all applications will be reviewed by a review committee consisting of MEC staff and other members offering technical evaluations and assistance as necessary. Then applicants will be notified if additional information or documentation is required. No additional information pertaining to submissions, including email and phone calls, will be considered once the review process is underway. When evaluating projects for funding, the review committee will consider the following criteria. And in addition, favorable consideration will be given to projects that can be concluded in a timely manner. Specifically, this means proposals that can be, or applications that can be completed on or before June 30th, 2023 in the professional judgment of the individuals and organizations applying. This completion deadline applies both to the destruction of eligible old vehicles and the deployment of eligible new vehicles into conversions or engine replacements. With the criteria for evaluation, first there is cost effectiveness, which is the cost share of the project, and this is for 25 points, up to 25 points. And then diesel fuel reduced or fuel volume displaced, which is the main criteria we are looking for. In this category, we put up to 40 points. With operating geography, which we are looking for for projects in western Missouri or Kansas, and again, we'll consider Iowa and Nebraska. So for a possible 20 points, and that would be if you did get it in western Missouri or Kansas. Next is the duty cycle with urban freight ranked number 1, then buses number 2, and then other trucks for up to 25 points. And lastly, outreach participation, which is up to 5 points. And all this is for a total of 100 points. Applicants are encouraged to submit questions in writing to myself at Metropolitan Energy Center at rfametroenergy.org by November 18th. MEC will try to respond to all questions publicly via FAQ on its website at the metroenergy.org procurement site by November 23rd. Email should use the subject line query for DERA RFA. Applications must be received by 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on November 30th. Only electronic applications will be accepted. Hard copy applications will not be accepted. And please include email on your application to RFA at metroenergy.org, subject line Clean Diesel Funding Programs with your organization name. Your application submission packet will need to include the application form, the budget table and fleet worksheet, and also attachments such as emission certificates and vendor quotes. Now let's briefly run through some administrative items.
Just quickly before we jump into that, Jeff, I wanted to point out that I noticed a typo on a previous slide. Slide 27 contains a typo that all projects should be completed by August 31st, not June 30th.
June 30th, yeah.
And second, I just wanted to remind everyone that questions on this presentation should be typed into the question window. And we'll get to those at the end of the presentation, but the question window should accept your ongoing questions throughout the period. All right, back over to you, Jeff.
All right, thanks. With confidential information, any restrictions of the use of or inspection of material contained within the application shall be clearly stated in the application itself. Written requests by the applicant for confidentiality shall be submitted to MEC in advance of the application submission deadline, along with the application material. The applicant must state specifically what elements of the application are to be considered confidential or proprietary. Any confidential or proprietary information must be clearly identified, marked, and separated or packaged from the rest of the application. Commingling of confidential or proprietary and other information is not acceptable. Neither an application in its entirety nor application price information will be considered confidential. Any information that will be included in any resulting agreement cannot be considered confidential. Back one there. With organizational conflict of interest, no person or business entity engaged by MEC to prepare the original grant application or who has access prior to the solicitation to sensitive information related to this procurement process, including but not limited to requirements, statement of work, or evaluation criteria, will be eligible to directly or indirectly submit or participate in the submission of an application for this grant solicitation. MEC has the right to retain applicants' original applications and other RFA response materials for its files. An application submitted in response to this RFA shall constitute a binding offer. Applicants should not be presently debarred, suspended, proposed for debarment, declared ineligible, or voluntarily excluded from covered transactions by any federal department or agency. This also applies to state, local, and other governmental agencies. All statistical and fiscal information contained within this RFA and any amendments and modifications thereto reflect the best and most accurate information available to MEC at the time of RFA presentation or preparation. The applicant is required to provide their FEIN in their application and also their unique entity identifier number, which is new and required this year. The applicant is required to provide their UEI in the application or pledge to obtain one prior to beginning work. Additionally, successful applicants are required to submit their UEI prior to the agreement or purchase order issuance or payment from MEC. And here's the link to get an UEI number if you don't already have one. MEC is not liable for any costs incurred by the applicant prior to issuance of a legally executed agreement, purchase order, or other authorized acquisition document. Successful applicants shall comply with applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations in the performance of all work under resulting agreement. Beneficiaries shall obtain all federal, state, and local permits, authorizations, and approvals of all work performed under the agreement. This includes the governing grant between MEC and EPA. Successful applicants who complete a contract agreement will be considered a beneficiary of the grant. Beneficiary will manage and expend funding to maximize funding, including commencing expenditures and activities as quickly as possible, consistent with prudent management. Contract planning, evaluation, and award to vendors will be required to align with the program's core goal as stated previously. MEC's evaluation will be based in part on how the application positively achieves each of these goals. With the selection process, any additional information may be requested from applicants by MEC prior to final award determination. MEC is under no obligation to fund any application and reserves the right to deny applications for any reason. Funding is limited. Applications meeting all the program's general policy guidelines may not necessarily receive an award. MEC reserves the right to delay any decision due to budgetary constraints. MEC also reserves the right to vary from the evaluation criteria listed within this document during the bid solicitation period as necessary or appropriate. Any modifications to evaluation criteria will be posted to MEC's website. It is the responsibility of the applicant to check for these changes, and we will try to notify you of those if we can. The selection notices are anticipated to be made in early December, and the applicants are expected to sign and return the agreement to MEC within 4 weeks of receiving the document unless otherwise noted in writing by the MEC contract specialist. The funding decisions are final. Fundings awarded are based on a competitive process where applicants are weighed against other applications and overall program goals. Changes unapproved by MEC to an awarded applicant scope of work after funds are awarded will not be allowed and may result in the nullification of the award. All funding is conditioned upon veracity of information provided with the application and will require accountability and reporting by the successful applicant, meaning the beneficiary. Such reporting will be in accordance with the procedures developed and prescribed by MEC. MEC staff will also conduct periodic site visits during and after installation to ensure compliance with the agreement. With annual reporting after the project concludes and through the life of the vehicles and/or deployment of installed equipment, beneficiary will track and report to MEC on an annual basis performance metrics of deployed and installed equipment, including fuel volume used and/or dispensed, successes and problems encountered, and lessons learned. This data and information will aggregate with our Clean Cities annual report to help justify program funding to the Clean Cities network nationwide. Beneficiary must also maintain equipment on property registry to provide disposition information to MEC and allow MEC access on at least a biannual basis to verify equipment through site visits until such time as the equipment has a fair market value of less than $5,000. Regarding payments, the following payment procedure will be included in MEC's agreement with the awarded applicant. Payments must be made in accordance with the provisions set forth in the grant. MEC will pay beneficiary the reasonable, allocable, and allowable costs for equipment installed based on satisfactory monthly progress and required documentation of work defined in the grant as determined by MEC. The beneficiary will be compensated only for equipment installed by the beneficiary and accepted by MEC pursuant to the terms of the grant. And payment will also be contingent upon MEC's timely receipt and acceptance of the required reports described herein. The beneficiary will be reimbursed on the submission of a request for payment and an invoice and report form provided by MEC. It will provide a detailed account of the costs, including receipts and invoices, proof of payment to vendors, and proof of scrap equipment when required. MEC will withhold payment of the final 10% of the total amount until the beneficiary has submitted and MEC has accepted all required narrative and financial progress reports enumerated in the grant agreement. And that concludes the formal part of the presentation. And now we'll see if we received any questions. Kelly, did we get any?
We did. We got a couple of questions that were typed into the question box, and just a quick reminder that if anybody has any further questions, please do that. The first question is, lead times on EV yard tractors stretch out 5 months from the purchase order date. Just a moment. There we go. Would you consider extending beyond 8/31 due to extended lead times and supply chain issues? This is an issue for a lot of our projects, and we're aware that this is not ideal. But in this case, we're constrained by the terms of the funder and cannot extend the period any further for this particular grant, unfortunately. I would like to jump to a previous slide to answer this other question, which is about the budget worksheet. In column F of the budget worksheet, what information should be put in group type for the application? Can you tell us a little bit more about what grantees should prepare to do for outreach and how often they should do outreach activities? I'm going to answer this second question first. For outreach, minimally, we like for beneficiaries to participate in announcements, and it is helpful for beneficiaries to provide fleet staff to be available for presentations to their peers in informational webinars. And depending on where they're located, we may ask someone to appear in person at an event to talk about their deployment experiences. Those are the typical types of outreach from a baseline level that we hope to see from our subawardees and beneficiaries. Group type for budget worksheet is something I don't have memorized, and I'm going to attempt to find the slide midway through here. Group type, looking at this here, and I'm zeroing in on the section of I'll tell you, the quick answer is there's typically a drop-down menu to choose from here, and if this version of the fleet data sheet is broken, as for these drop-down menus, we may need to reissue the fleet data sheet. I'm going to tell you, I can't answer this question specifically at this time. We will respond to you specifically through our Q&A on our website, and we will also look at the fleet data sheet to ensure that anything that is meant to be a drop-down menu has the data behind it to provide that ease of use for you. And Jeff, I'm not seeing any further questions. Did you have any questions through the group email?
Okay. No, I didn't receive any.
Okay. Looks like we may get off easy today with respect to questions. Let's give people another minute while you provide us with closeout information.
Okay. Again, questions will be accepted until November 18th, and use the subject line query for DERA RFA. And MEC will respond to all these questions publicly via FAQ on its website by November 23rd at the website shown here. And in closing, this presentation will be available online, and if you haven't already, please sign up for notifications on the RFA and other stuff we have. And we'll be sending you a link of this webinar. And again, applications must be received by November 30th. And also something else we'd like to remind you of is that we might have a DERA 23 grant that might be issued and we'll be applying for. And if you guys will be, so be looking out for that. And so if the funding's not available here or you need more time, that's something to consider. And also you can go to our website for information, other information on environmental issues, and to access our grant writing webinar from December of last year. And I'll ask Kelly again, do we have any other questions that just came in?
No further questions have been submitted.
Okay, and again, you still got till the 18th to get any in that you may have or remember. So if no other questions, thank you for joining our webinar and have a great day. And that concludes the webinar.